A very good evening to you and welcome to the desk here on Global Television. My name is Godwin Sunday. Today, we'll be examining the alarming state of food insecurity in Nigeria, where over 31.8 million people are currently facing acute hunger, with malnutrition rates among women and children reaching critical levels. The conversation will highlight the multifaceted challenges contributing to this crisis, including the ongoing conflict that disrupt livelihoods, severe economic instabilities marked by soaring inflation and currency devaluation, and the devastating effects of climate change on agricultural productivity. But joining me to talk about food and nutrition insecurity in Nigeria and assessing the Nigerian crisis is Professor M.A. Adebayo, who is the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture at Ajayi Crowther University. You're welcome to the desk here on Global Television, Dr. Adebayo.
Thank you very much, Global TV. It is my pleasure to be on the program this evening. So I'm so delighted to be here, and I want to say.
So let's delve into the conversation right away. Prof, how will you assess the food and nutrition insecurity so far in the country?
The topic for the conversation this evening. I think the food and nutrition situation in the country is at a very critical level. So as it were, we have a sort of crisis as we are speaking. It is no longer news that people walking in the streets cannot afford 3 square meals. Things are so expensive in the food market. So there is generally food and nutrition insecurity in Nigeria today. That is a fact we must all face squarely. There is nothing less than that we truly have a food and nutrition security in the country today.
All right, Prof. I understand that it is peculiar to a seasonal period where we have season like Ramadan, the festivities. Can we attribute this hike in price of food in the market to the festivity period, or it has been a long-standing ordeal coming through?
As Nigerians, we have an exploitative tendency. Most Nigerians usually use opportunities of festivities to, in a way, exploit the masses when it comes to food pricing and other related issues that have to do with access to food. So it is just a kind of way of life we have created for ourselves, which to me is superficial. It's nothing real, because just before the festivity, without any significant occurrence of maybe say flooding or any natural disaster, you just realize that prices of food will skyrocket few days to a festivity in the country. It's just a way of life. I'm not persuaded that rising food prices have anything to do with the festivities that we usually have in Nigeria. It's just that over time we have become so exploitative, just because, generally speaking, because our system is broken and it's not working. Nobody is monitoring anybody. People do what they like in what we call a free market. There is nothing, no regulatory tendencies, no regulatory efforts going on in terms of pricing for food items. So people just do what they like when festivities are around. So it has absolutely nothing to do with Ramadan or any festivity at all. It's just our own way of exploiting each other in this country, and which is unfortunate.
All right, so Prof, let's talk in terms of the general food insecurity in Nigeria. Our major challenge, if you want to assess Nigerian right now in terms of its agricultural and nutritional value chain, will you say that our problem right now is the insufficiency of food or the insufficiency of nutritional food in the country?
It is both. Our problem are insufficient food on one hand and insufficient nutritious food on the other. So we have both problems that we are grappling with, and the reasons are not far-fetched about why we have this crisis in our hands. Let me tell you what the president said when he was making his presentation of the 2025 budget to the National Assembly. Mr. President said that increasing agricultural production is central to our food security agenda. But insecurity has crippled this vital sector. We are supporting our farmers with funding and inputs to reignite productivity. Food security is non-negotiable. In this regard, we are taking bold steps to ensure that every Nigerian can feed conveniently and none of our citizens will have to go to bed hungry. These were the words, golden words of Mr. President. But it is the same administration that allocated just as little as about 2%, precisely 1.73% of 2025's budget to agriculture. And out of that 1.73 budget, they want to handle research, they want to handle production, they want to handle infrastructure, they want to handle equity, gender issues, and the likes, which are laudable. But you can compare this budgetary allocation to agriculture with what we have in other sectors of the economy. Defense and security was allocated about 10% of the budget, infrastructure over 8%, education over 7%, and of course, health sector was allocated 5%, whereas agriculture, which is the mainstay of the economy of the country, was allocated just 1.73% of the budgetary allocation, which is far away from what the Maputo Declaration of 2003 says, that each member state in the AU should allocate 10% of its annual budget to agriculture. So I think when you look at the words of, when you just oppose the words of the president with the budgetary allocation to agriculture, then you conclude that what we are just doing in this country is like a lip service to agricultural development. And I think this is where the problem stems from. Government is yet to really be very serious with transforming the economy of this country with the agricultural activities, which are very vital, and of course, which is the mainstay of the economy of this country. So now, we have insufficient food, and we have insufficient nutritious food that can feed this country. This is the reality of our nation as far as food, access to food and then sustainable food production, as far as these two factors are concerned.
Will you address the issue, even when the government raised concern on the fact that stakeholders like yourself, even within the food and agricultural value chain, are not open to collaboration with the government? How will you react to this?
I will react to this by saying that this is far from the truth. Scientists are doing a lot. Agricultural scientists across the nation are doing a lot, relying largely on funding from non-governmental organizations at the national and international level, relying firmly, for example, on USAID, and with the second term of Trump in office, things are changing dramatically with respect to international funding for agricultural research and agricultural production. particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. So we are faced with that situation where we need to look up onto our government to do more when it comes to funding research and funding agricultural activities in the country. And they point out to the fact that...
Sorry to interrupt you, Prof. The government, to a very large extent, will say that they've pumped a lot of money to the agricultural sector and they've not seen returns even within the agricultural sector. That is, a lot of farmers are into hoarding of products. A lot of farmers are not open to allow the government fully implement some of its policy around agricultural and value chain. But then you are saying that it's not factual that your sector has been. But then let's get you react to this. Are your practitioners within the agricultural value chain also coming up with innovation that will further motivate the government to increase the number of budgetary allocation for its, let's say, 2026 budget?
I've always, wherever I find myself being engaged in conversation about Nigerians, about Nigerian farmers, that we are there to serve in the university and as agricultural scientists and researchers, I've always maintained a stand that Nigerians are hardworking people. Nigerian farmers are really hardworking people. But it is up to the government. Government has a lot to do in creating an enabling environment that will enhance agricultural productivity in this country. We will not stop talking about the roles that the government has to play. There must be, whenever a policy of government is in place to support agricultural activities, it is also up to government to ensure that the benefits, the resources that they are allocating get to the grassroots. They must have mechanisms in place. It is not only enough for government to allocate resources to agricultural productivity and production. They must also ensure that they put in place mechanisms that will ensure that these resources get into the hands of the real farmers. The real farmers who are on the field, who are working on the field. The real farmers who need the research output. How do we support the system to make the research output available, the innovations available to the farmers? It is not for the farmers to develop the innovations. It's for the scientists, the agricultural scientists in the national and the international arena to develop innovations. And then these innovations through the extension system, a formidable virile extension system, these innovations will be taken down to the grassroots. This is where we are having the problems today. When government allocates resources for agricultural productivity, these resources get into the hands of political desktop farmers. Farmers who stay in their offices, who have, people who stay in their offices, politicians and their proteges and their bootlickers who stay in the offices. When the resources are allocated, they hijack the resources. So the real farmers don't truly get the benefits of the resources that are being allocated for agricultural production in the country. So it is still back to the government that they need to ensure that when they allocate resources for when they have a program that resources are being allocated, they must also ensure that the resources get to the real farmers. And government must support research. Government must support dissemination of research outputs. Government must support the dissemination of research innovation, new innovations that scientists are developing so that farmers can take full benefit of this knowledge, and then we can have enhanced agricultural productivity in the country.
Let's even look at another dimension to this. When there is no admissibility to the Farmers Council of Nigeria have not come out to openly criticize the government, or when we have budget inflation on the budgetary provision, in this case, doesn't this mean that there's a form of admissibility even within this particular circle of policy making, even coming back to you, even in your sector right now?
Let me give an analogy. Let me create a scenario that you understand perfectly. With the kind of government that we run, you realize that the voices that are there to hold government accountable are becoming, they are getting silenced, if I can put it that way. I'm trying to be a little bit careful now. There is this widespread, should I say, fear of government about speaking up. So now, if before the government has been supporting the Farmers Association with, let's say, 1.73% of budget allocation, whatever that means to individual farmers in the country. If farmers begin to speak up the way you want them to speak up, the associations of farmers, the kind of government we have can then decide that, oh, you are antagonizing our policies, then we are going to punish you for that. They may then reduce budgetary allocation to 0.5%. We have seen this. Do you know that in 2017, budgetary allocation was well over 2%. In 2018, it was a little above 2%. Now, in 2025, we have 1.73% of the budget being allocated to agriculture, to the agricultural sector. There has been that dwindling trend. Will the farmers then want to take on the government in terms of antagonizing them? I don't think the farmers want to hold that line. That is why I think that they are just saying it's just a situation like, let's just continue to get the little that we are getting, the crumbs the government is throwing at us at every year. Because if we should raise our voices too much with the kind of government that we operate in this country, we then decide not to even do anything with agriculture again. It is a pathetic situation that we have, that government is not as responsive to agricultural production as what we expect it to be. And that is reflected in the budgetary allocation on one hand, and in the implementation of even the little that has been allocated to agriculture on the other. So indeed, we have a serious crisis when it comes to food and nutrition security in our hands. And I will say that our farmers are doing the best that they can under the circumstances which we found ourselves as a nation to push for enhanced agricultural productivity. They are really doing their best.
All right. So, Prof, if I get you correctly, you are saying that the hands of the farmers are tied. So there's nothing that they can do in this regard, if I get you correctly.
I didn't say that. Farmers are doing as much as they can. Where they have the opportunity to speak up. But you know that what I just said is that our farmers do not have all the capacity to be as confrontational as you expect maybe an opposition to the government to be. Farmers cannot constitute themselves. They don't have that muscle. They don't have that wherewithal. They don't have the resources that it takes to regroup and become a pressure group on the government. Farmers do not have that kind of a capacity to turn the association into a pressure group. But I believe that whenever they have the opportunity, they have been speaking up to take on the government. And people like us who are in the sector, when we have the platforms like this, we have been engaging the government in the conversation that we really need to do more for the Nigerian farmers and do more for the agricultural sector.
All right. So, Prof, I'm curious at this point in time. Should the conversation rather be that the government should look at the agricultural sector and perhaps a way of tackling that sector, introduce a state of emergency even within the agricultural sector. Should the conversation be tailored towards this line?
I like what you have just said now. When this government came to power and they implemented a policy, I'm trying to remember now what they did at some point that they came to power. My thoughts at that time, and I said it openly, I think at the first edition of your program, when you brought me for the first edition of this conversation, of this kind of conversation then, that the right thing for government to do at that time is to declare a state of emergency in the agricultural sector. And I think things have even become worse compared with what we had at that time. So if the government of the day can hurriedly remove a democratically elected government in the state of the country, Rivers State, and declare the state of emergency in the whole state and push out a governor and all the democratic organs of that state, I think the government should also exercise the same courage to declare a state of emergency on the agricultural sector in this country. There is a food crisis. I don't know whether they go out to see how people go to bed. The government said that in its budgetary presentation to the National Assembly, he told them that he does not want to see our citizens go to bed hungry. But today, our citizens are walking the streets of Nigeria really hungry. More than 40% of Nigerians are suffering from acute food and nutrition insecurity today. Government has to do something drastic if it means declaring a state of emergency in the agricultural sector to arrest this trend where people do not have access to food, where people do not have access to nutritional food in this country. And this country is so endowed. Let me also bring in this conversation about when the government officials usually say that everybody should go to farming, everybody should go to farming. And I've always maintained the position about that it is an unorganized, an unserious nation that we expect all the citizens of its country, to go into farming. In a country like the United States of America, where people are well over 400 million, if I'm correct, people, less than 4% of that population of the United States of America are engaged in innovative, progressive farming activities. And those 4%, less than 4% of the entire population, are well able to feed the whole country of well over 400 million people, and they also have access to export to other countries to support them. But here we are in a country of just a little over 200 million people, and we cannot even feed ourselves. And government expects that every one of us will go into farming. What will happen to that sectors if everybody has to become a farmer overnight? It is as a result of the fact that people are hungry. There is so much hunger in the land. And so they have been pushed to a point that everybody has to produce the food that they have to eat. It does not have to be like this in a country that is really serious with improving its agricultural productivity.
Prof, let's talk about the fact that 3.8 million people in Nigeria are currently facing acute hunger with malnutrition. And these figures keep rising even on the daily basis. This is among just children and women, and it's getting to a very critical level. Where do we go from here as a people, Prof?
Data
Prof.
Correctly. Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear, Prof.
So let's address that data correctly. Over 40% of 200 million Nigerians are actually suffering from acute food and nutrition insecurity.
Oh, Prof, it has gone
Over
beyond
40% of them.
it has gone beyond 31.8.
You said 31.8. Okay, you
The
said
last research said
3.8.
31.8.
I
Have we gone past that,
no, I
that figure,
heard you.
Prof?
I heard you say 3.8 million. I heard you
31.8,
say
Prof, actually.
3.8. 31.8. Yeah, that's about today.
Yeah.
It has actually gone a little bit above that. We have a situation, apart from food and nutrition insecurity that we are grappling with. We also have a situation where people are suffering from acute hidden hunger. Hidden hunger in the sense that most of the food items that we consume are actually not as nutritious to support our bodies with necessary micronutrients like vitamin A, for example, zinc, iron, and some other micronutrients that the body needs. So there is also that aspect of the food nutrition problem that has to do with what we know as hidden hunger. So the problem of food in our country, the food crisis that we are facing is hydra-headed. It has so many dimensions to it. We have insufficient food on one hand. We do not have enough nutritious food on the other. And the third layer to that is that majority of our population are actually suffering from what we know as hidden hunger. People develop all manner of illnesses today. Things that when you hear about it, you just wonder. And most of these illnesses actually emanate from the poor quality food that we consume. I think as a nation, we just need to rise up to the occasion of declaring a state of emergency in the agricultural sector so that the government can actually look inwards, regroup, reorganize, and face the situation that we have headlong. We must do something very, very quickly and drastically to arrest this trend of food and nutrition insecurity that we are grappling with in our dear nation today.
The government is doing its best within its capacity to be able to combat these all hunger challenges in the country. But could climate change be also a factor while we have a lot of these irregularities within the Nigerian food and agricultural value chain?
Yes, climate change has made rain-fed agriculture very challenging, very, very challenging, because we now have the extremes of weather events as a result of climate change. Weather events, extremes of weather events like too much of rainfall when you need too little of it, and so much little rainfall when you need a lot of it. And we also have cases of flooding. When there is too much of rainfall, the whole agricultural landscape is flooded, crops are swept away, and the topsoil is eroded, and then nutrients are leached beyond the reach of beyond the root zone of the crops. And then we have a case of our crops not being able to actually express their full potential in terms of productivity. And we have the problem of acute heat that can really cause a lot of scorching that will make the crops to dry up right there without producing the output that we desire from them. And we have cases of resurgence of all manner of pests. Fall armyworm that is attacking crops like maize and some other cereal crops of importance to us is one case that we can quickly refer to. Fall armyworm is becoming more and more devastating to the cereal crops that we are growing. These are all the events that are coming to us as a result of climate change. So it is, yes, climate change is making agricultural production quite challenging. I agree. But then Scientists are doing a lot to develop crop varieties of maize, of cassava, of rice, of millet, crop varieties that are climate smart and resilient to these multiple stresses that I've mentioned, these multiple abiotic stresses and biotic as well, in terms of the resurgence of pests like the fall armyworm that I said. So scientists are doing a lot actually to arrest the situation that we find ourselves as a result of the negative effect of climate change. Yes, climate change is a problem that we are confronting in sub-Saharan Africa and of course across the world when it comes to agricultural productivity.
All right, so Prof, at this point, not sounding like a prophet of doom, but is there light at the end of the tunnel, even with Nigerians and consumers like us that don't go to the farm? Is there light at the end of the tunnel that the prices of commodities in the markets will not rise above the normal? Is there guarantees right now? Are there guarantees that the cost of the nutritional value of food items in the market will improve? Are there guarantees, are there modalities being put in place to ensure that we can grow beyond this level, even from your own perspective?
I will also not stand as a prophet of doom. I will say yes, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. I believe that for our dear country, better days are ahead. But we just have a very worrisome history. And that history is still our reality today. That when prices of goods and commodities go up in this country, they rarely come down. That is just our history and our reality as well. When prices go up, they don't come down. But I hope that the forces of demand and supply, when we are able to up our game in this very important, very critical sector, agricultural sector, which is, I say, it is the mainstay of our economy, if with the intervention of government, with our citizenry becoming more serious, more innovative in the way that they go about agricultural production practices, we are able to produce more, then the forces of demand and supply will definitely push down the prices of food items in the market. So these things will take care of themselves. But as I said, we are an exploitative country where we take advantage all the time of situations to exploit each other, particularly when it comes to food pricing. I just hope that better days are ahead. I can only hope, because honestly, we all will agree that we cannot continue like this. There is too much hunger in the land. We are hoping for a reversal of this trend in our dear country.
All right, Prof, let's look at the issues around security, the insecurity within the agricultural space, which is a very critical issue right now across the country. We heard that headers farmer clashes in Benue State and other parts of the country. Are there also recommendations from yourself, who happens to be a stakeholder within the agricultural space? I understand also that you are not just within the four walls of the academic space, you are also a practical farmer that owns farm, and also you are down to earth in that regard. But then, in order to address this concern, are there proposals for the government to create agricultural police or channel or create a agricultural vigilantes in the country from even your own angle?
There are so many interests, particularly political interests, that are causing insecurity. Farmer header clashes and so many other insecurity issues that we have in this country today. So many underlying interests that many of us cannot fully comprehend. Okay? So but then we know that all these problems that we are facing when it comes to insecurity, that is affecting our agricultural productivity significantly in this country, some of these issues stem from what we can call the lopsidedness in the way that the resources, the endowment, natural endowment of this great nation is being apportioned. We see the way our leaders go about using the resources of this country, the political office holders. They take care of themselves all the time at the expense of the citizenry. As a result of this, people are constantly being pushed to the wall. And when you are pushed to the wall, human nature is to react negatively and violently as well. So we now have to be grappling with cases of farmer-herder conflict at all time. We are grappling with Boko Haram. We are dealing with banditry, kidnapping, and all manner of vices because of the way and manner political office holders are using the resources of this country. They are not allowing the dividend of democracy to trickle down to the grassroots. And people have to react in this way of in different forms of crimes and violence that we are experiencing every time in this country. So we still need to go back and talk to government that they need to do the right thing. They need to use political offices to do the right thing in terms of in the area of allocating resources. Let Nigerians enjoy their God-given endowments. Political office holders should utilize the resources of this country to take care of the masses of this country. That is when we can have some level of respite from these multifaceted conflicts that we are facing in this country today. Government must rise to the occasion.
All right,
and
so
Nigerians we also have to.
Yeah, please go ahead, Prof. Go ahead, please.
And also, we also have to put all our hands on the deck to support the government in fighting against crimes and criminalities.
All right,
government.
So, okay. You are not towing the path of having a agricultural vigilante group that will be able to ensure that farmers are safe even when they are in the farm before government eventually takes it over.
Brilliant idea if we can have agricultural vigilante group. But I tell you, my uncle, I tell you that will also come with another layer of we had another layer to an already a situation that's already bad that we are dealing with when it comes to security. A bad situation that we are dealing with. If you had another layer, because the herders, the Fulani herdsmen who go about with their cattle all over the place, will react negatively and violently against agricultural vigilantes. They will then immediately see the vigilantes as their enemies, and they begin to fight these people tooth and nail. Unless the government is able to demonstrate the political will to solve the problem of insecurity, and they can do it if they want to do it. And they usually say that after God is government. But as I said, there are so many factors, there are so many layers of interest that we cannot fully comprehend. And you know that for most of these herders who have cattle that they allow to roam around, who are the real owners of these large herds of cattle? Who are the owners? Most of the owners are. So they will really not allow agricultural vigilante to work because they are the owners of this business, this cattle business that we have. I think that is another layer that is so frightening that's difficult to really comprehend, I would say.
So, Prof, just before I let you go, going by the current realities on our food security, insecurity in the country, and nutritional insecurity in the country, you're saying at this point that things will still remain the way they are. From the part of the farmers, there are no recommendations in order to help the government meet certain criteria and demand to help the government combat insecurity even within the food and nutritional value chain. So if I get you right, there is nothing that we can do. The price of inflation will keep going up. The number of acute hunger will keep rising. If this is what this whole thing is going to be like, Prof.
I didn't say that. Actually.
Well, let's get, because we need to tie it up to know at the bottom line, what should we be expecting? Are farmers going to come up with innovations in order to solve the insecurity? Because a lot of farmers that we've spoken to will tell you that the insecurity is born out of the full kind of malnutrition that they are giving out is born out of the fact that they can't go to the farms. And some will tell you that this other farmers clash is affecting them. Within the academic space, we are saying right now that the government needs to intervene. So right now, for those of us that are not farmers, what is in it for us? Are we to hold our peace and watch as events unfold? Or we should hope for a better Nigeria where the farmers and the government will one day wake up from the sleep?
Thank you very much. I think I have to submit that I'm an hopeful Nigerian. I'm so passionate about this country. I'm hopeful that better days are ahead. And I said that earlier on, that I hope that better days will come to us in this country. So we think each time and every opportunity that we have to engage government in a conversation like this, I believe they are listening. And I believe that there will be a good number of office holders who will be thinking about how do we solve these problems in an innovative and smart manner. So they are listening. And I believe that our citizens are also responsible and responsive. They know the challenges that we are facing. I know that individual Nigerians want a better country. And I know that every day we wake up as Nigerians, we are all working for one goal, to have a better Nigerian, a more prosperous Nigerian. So we can only be hopeful. We cannot lose hope. We should be hopeful that better days are ahead, that things will get better when it comes to food and nutrition security for our country. However, the job of government is to protect the lives and properties of its citizens. A significant, a very critical property of the citizens of this country are their farms. Farms. The farms that people invest their lives, their earnings on, are properties that government must protect in this country. The government must rise to the occasion of providing adequate security for farmers so that they can go to the farm and farm innovatively and enhance their productivity so that we can have enough food and enough nutritious food that can support food and nutrition security of the citizenry of this country. Well, the government has to do its part, just as farmers are also doing their parts.
All right, Prof. I think it's a very good time to say, Prof, thank you so much for being a part of the show this evening. Well, let me be optimistic like you, Prof. I believe so much that the government also at this point are also listening to us, and they will take necessary action in order to boost food security and nutrition security in Nigeria. And together, Prof, I believe so much in Nigeria and, of course, in the future of Nigeria. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.